evaluation tonight in the Director's Evaluation Committee. Before we get started, we do want to lay out the framework by which we do evaluations for Dr. Battle and go through that process before we go through the actual evaluation. Is anyone doing the
Clicking.
Y'all got a clicker?
Are you clicking, Jerome?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just say next slide when you're ready.
Next slide, please. So part of the evaluation schedule with Dr. Battle, there are 4 formative evaluation cycles that take place where Dr. Battle submits a report to the board 4 times a year following each quarter, academic quarter throughout the year. After the first 2, there is a semi-evaluation, and after evaluation 3 and 4, there is another semi-annual evaluation. And then into the fall, we have the final evaluation process that occurs sometime between September and October, following TCAP and other TVOS data that we receive from the state. There we go. So if we look at this evaluation cycle here, again, in quarter 1, we received a formative progress report from Dr. Battle in December of 2023. We received our second formative progress report in January or February this year from Dr. Battle. And now between quarter 1 and quarter 2 forms our semi-annual board feedback. Public feedback that we provide. Just know that during the formative progress reports, after each quarter, once that report is submitted, each board member has the opportunity to provide feedback from the evaluation that Dr. Battle receives, and subsequently she updates the board throughout her board reports that she gives at each board meeting to embed some of the questions that we have had on that formative feedback and progress report. So here we are today, bless you, here we are today with our semi-annual board feedback. With the evaluation process, also to note, Erin O'Hara-Block and I worked together to form that semi-evaluation and go through the process. So today, she and I will tag team in doing this evaluation process so that we can get the best information out to you. So, Erin, you want to lend it over? Sure. So I will pass it over to Erin to give the first component of this evaluation process, and then we will step in and continue.
So I think Bertina covered most of this, but just procedure-wise, the evaluation is focused on the things that are in the focused outcomes, so literacy, numeracy, SEL, and transitions. And then as we look at this, the board is also looking at student outcomes data that's shared by Dr. Battle and her team, implementation evidence, and review on progress of the signature initiatives. And so each board member provides individual feedback based on the items on the screen, which include again, student outcomes data, benchmark, and attendance, in particular for quarter 1 and quarter 2, because we're not at a point where we're at this point reviewing things like TCAP and TVOS. That comes later on after we receive annual data from the state. We're looking at each of the signature initiatives and how they relate to the focused outcomes, and giving sort of continuous feedback, some of which we will share here, but because we can't talk about every single, there's actually a considerable amount of feedback from each board member to Dr. Battle directly. We're doing a summation here of that. You want me to keep going here? So what we'll do first is talk about the feedback that Dr. Battle gives to us generally, which is her description, her team's description of what they have done in quarter one and quarter two relative to each focused outcome, and relative to the signature initiatives that are under that outcome. And so in terms of literacy, what we saw shared from Dr. Bottle and team is that in the fall 2023 administration, so that is at the beginning of this school year of FastBridge, A reading scores showed improvement among all of the different quintiles of students. In particular, looking from last fall 2022 to this fall 2023, there were 3 percentage points fewer in the lowest quintile, and 1 fewer in the second lowest quintile. And then we saw those increases happen in the 2 top quintiles, and students improved in terms of their overall median national percentage. And so essentially what this means, and we've heard this at the board level before, is that students came into the 2023 school year at a higher level than students came into the 2022 school year, which is great. That's exactly what we want to be seeing. And so in this year, we're also in the final implementation phase of the new curricula for literacy, so wit and wisdom at the K through 5, and then my perspectives 6 through 12. Do you want me to keep going? Okay. No, that's fine. And so in the report from Dr. Battle on quarter one and quarter two, a couple of big things that the district has been working on from the perspective of literacy reimagined, early literacy continuous improvement cycle. So essentially this means visits to every elementary school to look at implementation of K2 literacy and to do some pretty deep dives between the support hub team and teams at each schools on what is happening in classrooms, but also then what is happening in terms of data across schools, including the FAST data that we just talked about. And an additional learning series around multilingual learners with educators from 8 particular schools to focus on how the district engages students in what is known as a productive struggle cycle. Essentially, if we know that it is going to be difficult for students to learn to read because of coming in a multilingual situation, learning how to really push through that, and that is also being led by the support hub team, but working with schools. So these things, as we talk through the highlights, these are things that the district is doing, that the support hub team is doing with schools in order to get to those outcomes that we see on FAST. And I know we're going to talk more at the board meeting tonight about ongoing results. So also pre-K foundational skills, critical to be making sure that in pre-K to 2, students are experiencing seamless literacy transitions. And then one of the sort of newer things that the support hub team is doing is what is called Big 4 focus visits. Knowing that 52% of zoned high school students attend 4 of our 13 zoned high schools, Antioch, Cane Ridge, McGavock, and Overton, those schools are getting additional supports. So similar to the 2 things I just talked about in terms of the ongoing visits, but these are just a little bit deeper and a little bit, I think, more frequent as well in order to see improvement at those schools. Promising scholars and accelerating scholars are strategies we've talked about a number of times in terms of support for literacy. And so a huge number of students attending Promising Scholars. I was just actually saying to someone that we create a school district in the summer that is larger than probably 90% of school districts in the state, 17,400 students. That maybe even 90, maybe even 95. That's rough estimate numbers. But we have seen an average increase in attendance. And we know that from both Promising Scholars and then also Accelerating Scholars, we're seeing improved performance on math and reading assessments for students who have attended those programs. With Accelerating Scholars, one thing that a number of board members mentioned, and we'll talk about this later, but on Promising Scholars, Accelerating Scholars, our scholars portfolio overall, we've seen such important gains from these programs. They are also incredibly high touch and take a lot of work to get going and to continue to staff. And I think we're all very impressed that the district has been able to figure out how to continually staff and think about other options. So with Accelerating Scholars, with 7,000 students regularly every week receiving 90 minutes of high dosage tutoring, the district has had to partner with outside organizations in addition to contracting current teachers to do extra work. And so we can see here the number of different organizations that the district has worked with to do that. And I think there was almost universal feedback that has felt really critical. Enriching Scholars is a newer portion of the Scholars Program, but really hitting its stride with a total of 43 schools serving 1,700 students. And then we actually were just before the meeting talking about how much we all love the personalized student dashboard with the ability for parents to get in and actually look at individual student data and some of the ways that the district is working to increase access, making it easier for parents and guardians to sign up and to also continue to use that and to get additional reports that are being added all the time. And Bertina will talk about math.
So as we move into the other, our next focused outcome around numeracy, we want to talk about math to the nth degree. Is that, to the nth, math to the nth. There we go. We want to make sure we have that. And so, again, looking at data from the fall 2023 administration of FastBridge, we have showed improvement among the quintile distribution across for students. Percentage of students scoring in the bottom two quintiles have dropped by 5.2 points from fall 2022 to fall 2023, and they have improved by 6.4 percentage points in the top two quintiles as well. So again, as Aaron stated around literacy, we have seen a huge improvement from students from fall 2022 to fall 2023 coming in with math proficiency. All of the groups, again, improved their median national percentile in A math with an overall increase from 26th to the 28th percentile. And keep in mind, we're in the first year of implementation of our new math curricula, which has gone well overall. So some of the supports that we have provided for the first year of implementation, and we'll continue to expand upon that throughout the years through that implementation. It's a 5-year implementation for our Math to the Nth program, 6-year implementation. And so there are
6, but most recently, I think it's been extended to 8. Are the adoptions, did they approve the 8-year adoption now? Yes. Yes.
So the adoption is somewhere between 6 to 8 years. We'll figure it out soon. But we are in our first year of implementation, and this has been really critical. Some of these supports have been really critical to the success of this first year implementation that we are seeing. Some of those reports include training and professional learning sessions that we're providing all math teachers and coaches, unit internalization sessions, virtual help desk and office hours for teacher support. And then we really delved into scope and sequence and district centralized PowerPoints that are available for teachers and coaches to be able to access. Again, around promising scholars, the data has shown that students participating in the Promising Scholars program over 3 years in a row, it really helped our high to mid-level math achievement and students in that area. But we have seen not in our Accelerating Scholars program, not as significant or consistent growth across grade bands. And we'll talk about a little bit more about that later. Also moving on to our SEL social emotional learning focused outcome. We come to our navigator program. We have talked about navigators for a while now. We're in our third or fourth year implementation of navigators, and we are seeing key strategies in there to help support every student known, which is our district mantra. So we've seen 97% of students enrolled in navigators during this first semester. And if we're looking at the supports through our advocacy and peace centers, we've seen more than 18,000 individual support for students. 27% were responsive services, and 73% for preventative services that we're providing and supporting students with. Our coaches have also given more than 4,300 sessions on social emotional learning skills, brain breaks, and other types of programming. And also our restorative practice associates have provided more than 10,000 students, provided services to more than 10,000 students from 4,300 plus, or 10,000 students to 43 plus middle school. That's wrong. More than 10,000 services to more than 4,300 middle and high school students. Man, I didn't get that typo, but we will make it work. It's okay. Also around our focused outcomes and SEL, we want to look at our family and community support hubs. So Family University, which is another initiative that we launched. This is in our second year of launch for Family University. We have done district-wide in-person events, school-level engagements, and online offerings to be able to support families and communities for SEL support. Also, our community support hubs, particularly in Maplewood and Lawson High Schools, have, just to give you an idea of what that looks like, we've provided 50 food boxes, more than 1,100 snack items, more than 700 clothing items, 370 backpacks and school supplies, diapers, and over almost $80,000 of in-kind items. So we've done a lot of work, just to give you an example of two of our high schools that provide community support. Now, when we look at all the support that we have given through our programming, our advocacy centers, our peace centers, and the type of SEL support, we are seeing return on investment from that through our attendance. So our attendance rates for first semester, we have overall attendance support from 2020, from last school year to this school year, we went from 91.4% to 93.1%. So we have seen an increase there. Our chronic absenteeism has decreased. So we have gone from 27.2 to 21.3. Satisfactory attendance has increased, and so we are from 47% to roughly 56.2%, and then perfect attendance has also increased from 9.2 to 13.6. So we are really working through the work that the district is doing around SEL, social emotional supports, and outreach. We are seeing positive effects. So specifically on one of our key focus items around chronic absenteeism, we are seeing a positive decrease, which we want to see a decrease, y'all, in absenteeism, 6 percentage points, and satisfactory attendance has increased 9 percentage points. So that is something for us to really celebrate, that we are focusing and targeting in and seeing a return on our investments there. Want to do transitions?
So as we think about transitions, we've been, the district's been in particular focused on fifth grade transitions. We are entering into next year, the final phase of fifth grade transitions, meaning all schools that have been in the 5 through 8 category will now be in the 6 through 8 category. And as well, there are some transitions that are going on in terms of schools of innovation around Amqui and Neely's Bend moving to K-8. The district has recently introduced the idea of cluster pathways to help ease transitions within each of the clusters and continue to have sort of a theme, a programmatic identity within clusters. Those started with Overton, Hunters Lane, and Whites Creek. University MNPS continues to be a shining star of things that are happening at the district, including scholarships to TSU, Fisk, Lipscomb, and Belmont. With over 140 interviews and more than 75 offers made to date, but more to come on that for this year's seniors as they move into their freshman year of college. And also comprehensive supports going on in all schools for students, including reviewing the aspirations for each individual student to try and identify additional supports as needed. And then the last focus outcome, and again, what we're going over now is what the director shared with the board to give feedback on, and in particular highlighting some things that board members also thought were worthy of noting. So equity roadmap. The equity roadmap has been a topic of much conversation at the board and beyond. And Dr. Battle mentioned at a recent meeting, and several of board members have been able to participate in meetings of sort of what is the equity roadmap, how is it working, and what can we do with individual groups, with the African American community, Hispanic community, and Muslim communities. So individual meetings with each of those groups. And now the district and staff are working on an update to the roadmap to create additional alignment with signature initiatives, incorporate additional data, actually look at operationalizing some of these strategies that some of which have already been in place, but are expanding, and then feedback loops to continue to do the types of things that we just talked about in terms of meetings with individual groups. Yeah, I think I kind of covered that second one. Also in the category, so we added this category of focus outcome all because there were some things that actually literally are across all of the work that is being done. We've heard a number of different times from Dr. Battle and team about PEER, which is the partnership with Vanderbilt and the district, and specifically the research and evaluation team. But teams that are doing ongoing research work in post-secondary readiness, student absenteeism, supporting educators, newly renamed educational equity ecosystem and SEL skills, and also rapid response teams. So the things I just named are longer term research projects, but added rapid response teams to try and measure some sort of rapid changes and then subsequent impact on outcomes, both for students and implementation on navigators, instructional interventions, and university MNPS. The leadership framework is something that we've talked about a number of times here at the board as well, and was actually, I think, highlighted in the recent announcement of the study from Harvard and Stanford, but also has received national recognition from the Council of Great City Schools. Dr. Battle wrote a fantastic op-ed in Ed Week. If you have not seen it, check it out. And also from the AVID community, national recognition of this work that is being done at the district. And when we say leadership framework, what we mean is the work of the district to regularly identify key practices for leaders and continue to make sure that those are happening in an ongoing way, from visits from principals to visits by executive directors, and looping back with the academics team on a regular basis. These types of things happening weekly. And then in terms of the work of envisioning the central office as support hub, I think we've all been very excited about the classroom associates. So 429 out of 510 available positions filled, which is fantastic with something that had just recently been made a new position. And 60% of vacancies in our so daily substitute needs being filled by classroom associates. And we've seen the number of vacancies in an individual day and across days go down, as we have seen classroom associates and subs able to fill those vacancies, and continued positive feedback. I think we've all heard really positive things about classroom associates. Any questions about the things that were in the director's report before we move into feedback from the board?
So I do want to add with the director's report, we receive each quarter a very detailed director's report. So what you're seeing on the screen is a summary or highlights of that information that we received. If we wrote it verbatim, we would be here for days. So we did a summary of the high points that we have seen, or areas that we thought that were important for the public to see and for us to know and be able to discuss.
If the public wants to look at the full thing, would they be able to do that? I think we'll need to figure out what we make available, but so let us have a little discussion about that. Okay. Yeah.
Any other questions? Nope. All right, so let's go ahead into the second section here. Yes. All right. So as we, so board considerations, this is the area by which we have looked at areas that the board wants to look at how they can support, as well as areas that we want to continue to progress monitor and get regular feedback from Dr. Battle and her team about these specific areas. So when we look at the area of literacy, areas that our board has highlighted that they want to continue to support is the continuous improvement strategies that we have seen for accelerated growth for all of our students, while also addressing gaps among our subgroups. And that is students of colors, economically disadvantaged English language learners, and exceptional ed students. Another area of support that we want to continue to uplift and highlight is continued high quality, high touch implementation that we have seen is working with the scholars portfolio. We have seen the evidence, we have seen the data that supports that these are trusted strategies that are helping and working to support students across our district. So we want to continue to see how we can support and scale that particular program and how we can continue to invest in it. Areas that we want to progress monitor and continue to get updates on is the fidelity we're in our last year of implementation for Wit and Wisdom. Also looking at autonomy for teachers and small group instruction opportunities. We also want to look at improved communication and training or continuous improved communication and training for families on understanding data and utilizing the personalized dashboard. So as we continue to implement the new dashboard and the programs within that dashboard to make it more accessible to families, we want to see how many families are continuing to participate and hopefully increase that number as well. Want to do the next?
Sure. So on numeracy, I think you, as one might imagine, some of the feedback is very similar to literacy. And so I think you could sort of repeat the same things that Berthina just mentioned here. I think importantly, as the board was responding on numeracy separate from literacy, it was sort of like all of the things that we talked about within literacy, but also we have seen in reports from Dr. Battle and in the research that was done on the accelerating scholars, in particular by Brown University, that we've seen more consistent improvement in reading than in math for students participating in the scholars portfolio. Interestingly, when we looked at the recent report from Harvard and Stanford, we actually saw the opposite to be true. And so, signals often go in different directions with data. But one of the things that we are seeing is that for students who are needing extra help, we want to make sure that we're continuing to see consistent improvement in the numeracy category as well as in the literacy category in our scholars portfolio. I'll keep going and then you can do the last couple. On social emotional learning, I think in an ongoing way, the board has had interest in, we have seen improvements in attendance, and we talked about those in the first part of the presentation, but making sure that we are expanding what we know are individual student strategies that are positively impacting attendance. And we've seen some of that, and just, for us to continue to support that as it helps and as we can from the board perspective. And then things I think have been highlighted both in Q1 and Q2 responses, but also in previous responses, is just knowing a little bit more from the progress monitoring perspective about the relationship between different SEL strategies, navigators, advocacy and peace centers, and improvement in student outcomes, attendance, engagement, and behavior. Those are often hard to sort of suss out which one of those things and how are we seeing those outcomes, but trying to continue to get more information on those, which often comes in the form of director updates, which are incredibly useful. And then we have had a couple of board members mention as well, what is the student experience with the SEL strategies, both in attendance, but also navigators, advocacy and peace centers. So how are students actually experiencing those? We know that can be challenging given to sort of learn more about the student experience given some of our complications around surveying, but are there other ways we can think about what students experience and how to continue to improve that? And then continued work on identifying the underlying causes of chronic absence, which we know that Dr. Bottle and team have dug into and reported on in these most recent reports on for the evaluation. And so continuing to understand more about that for the board is something we highlighted. I'll keep going while Berthina recovers. In terms of transitions, as I've said before, lots of positive feelings on the board and in the community about the fifth grade transitions and Reimagined. We want to be able to, as a board, do work to continue to support that. The most recent one of these is Head MLK and wanting to continue to support success there. Continued communications around MNPS Reimagined was something highlighted by board members in terms of, what's our role and how can we continue to help folks support both the why and the what of MNPS Reimagined, and then the same around university MNPS to the extent that we can help promote scholarship opportunities and this type of thing. And then from the progress monitoring perspective, a couple of mentions around the 6-8 experience in particular and thinking about advanced academics. So what does advanced academics look like? And we talked about some of this when we talked about the MLK Head expansion, high quality implementation of the new cluster focus pathways. So as the district continues to roll out specific sort of themes within clusters, what can the board do to help, and also how can we help make sure that that's happening in ways that are expected within the areas that we are representing. And as the district is focused on learning more about what students need in terms of college and career readiness strategies, how does the board continue to monitor that and to help as well? And then finally, as we think about the things that come under sort of all of the focused outcomes, the board has been supportive of and wants to continue to be involved in ongoing outreach on the equity roadmap, especially as we head into equity roadmap 2.0. What can the board be doing to help with refinement process, and how can we be thinking about the equity roadmap in relationship to student outcomes? And then I mentioned earlier, lots of excitement, I think, on classroom associates and ensuring that that can continue at the scale that it exists, continue to grow, and then also, frankly, get some attention nationally for what is a new strategy to address an old problem. And that's it on sort of summation of what was in board feedback. So I think if anyone has any additions to things that we highlighted here, any questions about things we highlighted here, anything y'all want to share, now's the time. Hopefully everyone sees themselves reflected. And if not, please feel free to raise your hand and add anything. Please.
So I appreciate, of course, the summary of the entire evaluation, because to the point that was made, I mean, we get like a 20-page document. So that would be a lot to review on the board floor. In the future, I would love it if we had this before the meeting so we could kind of go over it for our own selves. Frankly, the majority of the beginning stuff, we should know. I know we need to go over it on the board floor because we need to make that public information and make sure people know that we're with Fidelity doing this work. But I would like for us to start trying to use our meetings if we can where they're more about our supports and what we need to do going forward. And then kind of what is Dr. Battle's response to it, if there is any kind of response of what we need to do to make sure that we all stay on the same page. But it's a lot of work to put it together, whether it's Dr. Battle and team, or of course, Berthina or Aaron. So I appreciate it. And it is a good summary of all the feedback that I saw. So thank you.
Yeah, I want to commend you of formalizing a system, that's not a word. I was like systemizing, but like that is so, I know, it's like, it's right there. This evaluation process, and that also it is user-friendly. So if you're not familiar, I know we've had process in the past that if you're from the public, it'd probably be overwhelming to digest. So I will recommend. Thank you too for actually doing that. And back to Chair Arawad's comments. I think kind of the next steps as we formalize this process is especially when it comes to our response. Now I'm totally lost in my in my response. But when it comes back to what the board can do and how we can monitor it, what is the most productive way in that monitoring of the responses? And it's like, how can the board progress monitor, like for example, for the literacy, Fidelity implementation of the wisdom along with autonomous for teachers and small groups? Like, when we say that, what is actually productive for you and your staff in that monitoring where we can give critical feedback, but it's also productive in your response or your improvement? So I don't know if you can answer that now, or maybe in the next round of that, we can start focusing when we do our part, how do we respond that's productive and that gives you good feedback outside of what we put in the evaluation. There we go. I'm getting it out, y'all.
I mean, the board members who are around the table, I'm going to take the time to digest the feedback that has been provided, and then find ways to operationalize. And if there's a disconnect between the two, that's something that I will communicate back to the chairs of the evaluation, or at least kind of what I'm thinking about. That might be an artifact, if you will, around how we're meeting or responding to the feedback that is provided through the evaluation process. So, hearing it, digesting it, we'll figure out how to operationalize it and or make like a recommendation around what it might look like to make sure that we're meeting the intent of what the board is requesting.
I know, and I think I would just add one thing, and I sort of referenced it here. In part, I think about the board support part as like things we're all thinking about trying to push in some way on our own in the community. And the progress monitoring part, Dr. Battle and team often respond by taking things we have highlighted in there and then making sure that they are part of director's report in some way, shape, or form. I find that to be really useful. And or it comes in the form of a board update. Or, it's the type of thing where what I think we're trying to do here is synthesize a little bit feedback that is sort of either consistent across board members or has been mentioned on multiple occasions, and make sure that makes it into like this high level overview that hopefully signals to Dr. Battle and team, like, this is something we really, really care about as a group, not just something that sort of one of us individually might care about. And I think in the feedback that goes directly to Dr. Battle from each of us, there's a little more of both, right? If that makes sense to you.
I mean, and hopefully what this board has experienced is as we're digesting the feedback, that we're trying to be responsive, either by director's reports or director's updates or just other information. And we definitely try to reflect it in the next evaluation cycle, just to kind of formalize what's been done. But we try to call it out, and we try to make sure that there is some alignment or tie back to how we're going to do that. I think to your most specific question is, like, there is a separation between, like, what the board can do and what my team does. And so just being able to articulate that, I get I think it's about the intent of what we're trying to accomplish.
And someone has some audio playing. If you can just turn it. Yeah, I thought it was just me. Oh, okay. Thank you. Because I was just like, okay, what is that? Okay. Yeah.
And I will also say, in the evaluation process, as we have gotten out reports from Dr. Battle as well, there has been times where I've followed up if I didn't see areas that have been talked about consistently on the board floor, or questions that we have had consistently, for Dr. Battle to go back and add in. So one of those components that we weren't seeing consistently that we kept saying that we wanted to see was around that equity roadmap. And so now you see that it is a complete component within the evaluation process. So that feedback is often taken back, and we're getting it back in the form of our evaluation, again, on the board floor when she's giving our board reports, and sometimes one-on-one with board members if it's specific to just one question or so. And so I think over the last couple of years that we have done this evaluation process, we have seen positive feedback in that feedback loop between Dr. Battle and board members to get the information that we want to see. And so I think one thing that for that area for support, and I agree with Aaron there, what are opportunities within this feedback that we can take out to our communities or advocate with state and local officials to really support the initiatives that we see that are really working within the district, and giving us that useful information to be able to take that out. I think that is one area that we were looking for, to be able to continue to support those initiatives, especially as we're looking at the sunsetting of ESSER, and some of these key initiatives that we want to continue, that we know that's working. How do we continue to support it and fund it in a way that continues scale and operation?
I think for y'all too, to just know that if something makes it into your feedback multiple times and or it is across multiple board members, it's going to find its way into our report back as well. So, and Chair Elrod, you asked a question about timing. I think, point well taken, to get you all, make sure to get you all this to take a close look at. So if something is missed ahead of time, we can make sure that it's in here.
I mean, my sincere hope is that it's not just for us, it's also for Dr. Battle. I think the more time, like Dr. Battle was mentioning, the processing time. I mean, understandably, that time is going to take beyond what's on the board floor, and the response will take more than that, whether it's director's reports or additional board meetings or what have you. So, but my hope is that with the more time we have to sit with it, the more effective we can be on that feedback. And of course, the less that feedback comes as a surprise and it's actually actionable.
So yeah, that's where I will take responsibility for this time. Generally, we have tried to provide that feedback to Dr. Battle and her team in a timely measure. We got delayed this time in part due to illness and everything else. But we try to get that feedback to Dr. Battle and her team so that they can respond in a timely manner and get that information back out to the board. So what we can do in the future is make sure that when we're sending it over to David Severe, we can have him send it out to the board so that you guys are receiving it prior to board meetings. Yeah. You have to get. Do we have any other questions? That threw me off.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, if there are no other questions, we will adjourn. Thank you. I'm like.